Welcome to the Tales of the New Jersey Shore, the podcast of New Jersey author and historian Emil Salvini. Emil's Facebook page of the same name, Tales of the New Jersey Shore, has tens of thousands of followers. His best-selling books on the Jersey Shore were the basis for his television documentaries broadcast on PBS and NJTV. So sit back and join Emil as he shares his tales of the 127-mile coastline known worldwide as the New Jersey Shore.
Hi, I'm Emil Salvini, author and historian, and these are Tales of the New Jersey Shore. I call this episode Cape May, a Phoenix from the Ashes. When I first visited Cape May, I wondered why so many Victorian-era structures, over 600 of them, survived in the city center. There were so many, in fact, the resort is designated a National Historic Landmark, and the status is protected by the city and the government. As I researched and wrote The Summer City by the Sea, an illustrated history of Cape May, New Jersey, I discovered the answer. In 1878, while the city slept, one or more arsonists, bad guys, were about to change the resort's future forever, beyond their own furtive mission. It was November 9th, and the hotels were closed for the season. The hotel owners took the opportunity to tackle much-needed repairs and look forward to a restful winter. Little did they know that fate was about to destroy their beloved resort. The Ocean House on Perry Street, across from the east side of Congress Hall, was situated on a precious piece of land, only 1/2 block from the beach and close to most of Cape May's popular cottages and hotels. I'll discuss later why the fire began in the Ocean House, but let's just say it was well insured and the owner had boarded an early morning train for Philadelphia. The fire was first observed by a workman repairing the roof of the Stockton Hotel at approximately 7 a.m. No alarm was yet sounded until Colonel Sawyer, you may remember him from our Lottery of Death podcast, observed a woman standing at the corner of Washington Street, quote, gazing intently in the direction of the Ocean House, end quote. A general alarm was sounded by the ringing of the city's church bells, and the sleepy residents arose to discover, as a local newspaper later wrote, quote, the fire fiend was afoot, end quote. The old resort was easy prey with vast towering hotels of the most combustible wood, narrow streets, a location where strong winds are the rule, and the absence of anything like an adequate fire service. These were the elements essential to a disastrous fire. Shortly after the alarm was sounded, a 36-mile-per-hour wind fanned fires, bursting through 6 sections of the Ocean House's roof, and the hotel was doomed. For a popular resort, Cape May's fire service consisted of an antiquated hand engine, 1,500 feet of rubber hose, 3 small chemical engines, and a single hook and ladder truck. Realizing they could not stop the fire, Cape May's authorities wisely sent to Camden, New Jersey, for a steamer and additional hose. While the locals battled the fire and they waited for the more modern equipment to arrive, the heat generated from the well-seasoned timbers of the Ocean House soon ignited the new wing of Congress Hall on the other side of Perry Street. A reporter would later write that just a little bit of water could have easily saved Congress Hall, and while they had plenty of water, the hoses were in horrible shape, and so the famous hotel was lost. The flames from the Ocean House next set the Merchants Hotel complex ablaze, along with the Centra House Hotel. The citizens then formed a bucket brigade. They connected a fire hose to a Jackson Street fire plug in an attempt to save some of Jackson's buildings. Unfortunately, the old hose to the fire plug burst, and as 5 consecutive replacements were put into service, each one immediately burst. Buildings on Jackson Street began to burn. As was the case in any wooden city by the ocean, each structure passed the destructive flames to its next-door neighbor. the list continued to grow of hotels that were lost. The Atlantic Hotel, the Knickerbocker Hotel, the Excelsior Hot and Cold Baths, and Denizot Seaview Cottage. As the train delivered the steamer from Camden, it was accompanied by Camden's Fire Chief Bradshaw. He took control of the battle. Once assessing what was lost, he realized what must be saved at all costs. Bradshaw knew if the Waitman block of commercial buildings on the corner of Perry and Washington Streets were lost, the essential commercial district of the resort would succumb. So a deluge of water from the Camden steamer saved the corner and the district from imminent destruction. The chief also sent for a second steamer, since the water supply of 90,000 gallons was sufficient, but the means to deliver it to the flames were not. As the first steamer soaked buildings along Jackson Street, news that the Columbia House, located between Decatur and Ocean Streets, was ablaze. It was one of Cape May's most favorites, with its capacity for 600 guests and 275 bathhouses along the beachfront. The Columbia was lost, and the residents feared the massive Stockton Hotel that took up a city block could be next. The second steamer was moved from Washington to the intersection of Columbia Avenue and Gurney Streets. And although 700 of the Stockton's bathhouses were lost, and several Stockton Row cottages on Gurney Street caught fire, they still stand today, and the Stockton was... The survival of Warren's Drugstore on the opposite side of Ocean Street at its junction with Columbia Avenue became imperative, thanks to a half-dozen weary citizens connecting a discarded hose to the fire plug on the corner of Washington and Ocean Streets. They halted the fire's northward advance. A spectator later wrote, "The Stockton, Columbia Avenue, and properties east seemed doomed. The fight for Warren's safety was of the most desperate order, because on its preservation really depended the existence of the last of our large hotels, the Stockton, and surrounding properties." So while the Stockton was razed in 1910, the surrounding properties the spectator mentioned still exist today, for the most part thanks to that corner skirmish. Oh, and by the way, while no longer a drugstore, that little shop at the corner of Columbia and Ocean still stands. Stop by and knock wood when you get a chance. I've reduced all of the details of the fire, or this would be an hour-and-a-half podcast. Some things of interest to mention, though. Who started it? Well, no one went to jail. Most people at the time thought it was that fellow who had conveniently boarded the early morning train for Philadelphia the day of the fire. His name, Samuel R. Ludlam, the owner of the Ocean House. He was charged but later released since no concrete proof could be uncovered. And some more trivia. While it was reported that not a single cord of wood survived the fiery Holocaust, a curious side note to the blaze. The stables of the Wyoming House, located on Jackson Street, opposite the Atlantic Hotel, it was filled with dry straw, and in the middle of the conflagration, escaped completely intact. And here's a note sort of to the darker side of human behavior. As desperate hotel and cottage owners hurried to save their possessions from the inferno, an ample supply of scoundrels were ready to cart the items away. 4 weeks after the fire, constables recovered in a variety of places furniture, store goods, clocks, and fine linens. The Cape May Wave reported, quote, "Goods of every description stolen from the buildings during the fire have been recovered. On one man's premises, 4 wagon loads of furniture taken off Congress Hall's lawn after the fire were found secreted. The Atlantic Hotel parlor carpet was found in a tank near the lighthouse. Boxes of stores from the hotels were recovered in private houses miles from the scene of the disaster. Whole suites of chamber furniture were found in actual use in respectable households, and in many instances, the issuing of legal processes was necessary to compel delivery of the stolen property. So in the beginning, I called this podcast The Phoenix from the Ashes. After the fire, the city was faced with a decision to modernize like some resorts did at the end of the 19th century, or to rebuild itself in a smaller, scaled-down version of its pre-fire self. Fortunately, it chose the latter. I refer to this as the road not taken, and actually it's a podcast in itself. We'll be doing that in the near future. Till then, this is Emil Salvini. I hope you've enjoyed today's podcast. If you did, please pass the link on to your friends and relatives. Our next one's going to be further north. We'll do one of the northern resorts. Until then, have a wonderful day. Cheers.